glassing prep. So we're going to start by putting little foam squares on top of the racks. This allows the board to rest nicely without getting stuck to the rack since we're doing color work. You don't want any of the tape adhesive to transfer onto the blank or the foam or the color that you just laid. You're going to spray the board off with air, get it nice and clean, and use our homemade rail tool here to draw a line around the crown of the deck where we will tape off the cut lap. This is great because it gives you a reference point for when you're pulling your tape. And there you go, you have a nice clean line to follow. Otis is going to be pulling his tape on the inside of that tape line. The line is there and the tape is on the inside of it, as you can see. And he takes his time to make sure he gets a nice, clean, even tape line, even though he's been doing this for decades. He's going to run a razor blade across it to make sure it's flat. Pull his tape measure around from tape to tape. As you can see, it's at 30 inches, so you want the cloth to be at least 30 inches wide, if not more. We use the 3M hand masker that we sell. He's going to mask off the inside of the tape line. This is for when you pull the cloth and lap it onto the deck, it won't get onto the center part, which you may do a different color, keep white, or you might come back with the same tint, but you just don't want it blotchy and messy. Next, he'll be pulling the 6 ounce off of the roll. 6 ounce is the minimum you should use when doing color because it really accepts the color well. You notice when he cuts the cloth, he's not cutting it really close to the rail like a standard pre-lap. He's cutting it pretty low so it'll have plenty of cloth to lap over and get the full entire rail covered. So he's not even cutting that section. It really doesn't matter once you lap it onto the paper. As he cuts, he checks to make sure that there's enough cloth to cover. He's going to do a special cut in the tail. Everybody has their own style cut, but this is the one that he's going to be doing, and as you can see, there's quite a few cuts, but it's going to give you a very clean looking tail when you're done. And here's the view from underneath as well. Does a single cut in the nose and does relief cuts along the edge on both sides. This allows the cloth to lap and form better to the nose without getting any creases or bumps. Here it is again. Some relief cuts on both sides, and he double checks, and you're good to go. We're going to pour our resin and prep for lamp. Otis is just going to grab a bucket that has a similar color to what he's going to be using. Pour your resin. These little cups that he's mixing up are just little Dixie cups, and that's what he's going to actually mix the color in before he strains it. He's going to go ahead, get his magenta tint from Fiberglass Hawaii, mix in a generous amount, and pour it into the bucket that has the clear resin in it. This way you can mix your color and change it before you dump it into the resin, so if you do blow it in the color mixing, you don't waste a lot of resin. So you can see the temperature is 72 degrees. You'll catalyze it between 30 and 40 cc's. Just depends on how good you are with resin. Nice even pour down the center, and he's going to work the resin from the center out, just like as if you were doing a clear lamination. It may look like Otis uses a lot of resin, and that actually is the case. With color, you want to use more resin than with a clear lam because you want it to go on evenly. You don't want to have it blotchy or run shy in certain areas. As you can see, he's very generous with his rail waterfall. Look at that, nice even along the rail. Everything is fully saturated. That's perfect. He's coming back and he's constantly working that rail. Look at that. You don't want any dry spots because it's going to come out blotchy. And the other rail. You notice too the way he moves, it's very fluid and smooth. It's not jerky, it's not little sections, it's nose to tail, back and forth, consistent. It's going to tuck that lap. As you can see, it's fully saturated and the color is beautiful. Constantly working the rail, using his other hand. Doing color work is definitely messy, but it looks really, really good when you do it the right way. And this is the right way. Another thing to notice is that he tucks his lap in the center, and then he works it to the nose, and then he works it back to the tail. This is to avoid any creasing in the cloth or bunching up. Just gonna pull his tail tight on there. You want to make sure that you get the corners nice and saturated so they don't have any air bubbles right there and there. So when you sand those and they open up, it looks pretty bad. So he gets it nice and saturated. Cutting the lap. So the lamb isn't fully cured, but it's cured to a certain point to where you can cut through it still with the razor blade. If you wait too long, it's going to be too difficult, and you'll get a very uneven, jagged looking cut. As you can see, he's just cutting in the nose right now to open it up, and then he's going to do what they call a zipper cut. And all you do basically is fold the paper up to the tape line, keep the blade flat like so, and just run the edge right through it. It's going to open up the tail as well. You can see there's multiple layers, so it's a bit thicker and a little bit trickier to cut through, especially with those tight curves. So you just want to take your time and make sure you do it right. Once again, it's super important to not let the lamination get to a full cure. You want to get it about 3/4 of the way cured. That way you can still manipulate the cloth and you can cut right through it nicely. So after we've cut the lamb, we're going to come back with a grinding disc. Otis is using a 50 grit grinding disc, and you can see his touch is very, very soft. You just want to blend those edges. You want to blend along the lap line as well. You're not really cutting into it necessarily, you're just knocking it down so it's flat and smooth. As you can see in the close-up, Otis just hit right on the edge there. He didn't hit any of the foam, just right on the fiberglass. He's coming back with a piece of 80 grit to just clean it up by hand. He's going to take those corners and edges down. Any edges or sharp corners or anything like that is going to create air bubbles when you come back and do the lamination on the deck. So you want to get it nice and smooth so everything looks tight. Prep for deck inlay. So a deck inlay can be a different color, it can be a piece of fabric, it can be a foam stain. On this one we're going to be doing a light pink on the deck. Otis is going to start by taping off right on the lap line. As you can see, he's right on the edge. Here's a nifty little trick that he uses. Turns the 1-inch tape into a 1/4 inch and a 3/4 inch piece. Helps to hug those curves and gives you a lot. We're going to come back with the masking paper and some tape. This time we're just going to mask on the outside of the rail. because when we do the different color, we don't want the resin to get on the rail and discolor the rail. We want that bottom lamb and the rail to be the same color, while the deck is just inlaid with a different color. This time we're going to use a spreader to make sure it's flat and tight to the board. If you use a razor blade, chances are you'll end up tearing or putting little holes in the paper or the tape, and then the other resin color will get through. Pull our cloth, 6 ounce again for the deck, just a single layer. Otis mixes up a little bit of white pigment with red tint in order to get his desired pink color. Once again, we pour it down the center of the board and work it out towards the rail. As you can see, Otis has great control of the squeegee and the resin. It's fully saturated, even, beautifully done. Trimming the deck inlay. So just like with our cut lap on the bottom, we're going to wait until it's about 3/4 cured, and then we're going to come back and we're just going to trim along the tape line. Instead of pulling up the paper and the tape, we're just going to follow this line. We do have a little bit more leeway since chances are we're going to be doing a pin line over this seam. So if it is a little bit of a wobbly cut or there's, a little bit of wiggles in it, it's not a huge deal because we'll go back, tape off, and have a resin pin line cover it. Once he's done, he pulls the tape. Now you can see we have a nice pink and magenta board. It's ready for the clear layer of 6 ounce over the top to wrap the deck. Prep for deck lamination. So on this board, we're going to be doing a same color tint on the deck. We're still going to tape off the bottom just like we taped off the top. However, we didn't do a pencil mark on the bottom. The reason why we didn't do a pencil line is because you can use your hand and thumb to guide you along the rail. As you can see, it's a very nice tape job Otis has done. Come back with a 3M hand masker and tape off on the inside of the tape line. Now we're going to pull our first layer of 6 ounce cloth. As you can see, Otis is using the bottom edge of the rail as a guide for his scissors to cut. Going to do the nose and tail cut. And now we're ready for color on the deck. Once again, he's going to use quite a bit of resin and catalyze it between 30 and 40 cc's. Starts off with a beautiful pour down the center. Another key in getting a nice glass job is to have a nice even pour. As you can see, Otis has mastered that. And once again, fully saturate that lap. Look at that. Plenty of resin on there, ready to go. He's working it down, working it back and forth, nose to tail, nice and fluid. Otis has pulled his laps, and the board will cure to about 75%. And then he's going to come back just like with the deck and go ahead and cut the bottom. He's going to cut the bottom doing the same zipper cut that he did on the deck. Hopefully this will help you do a color lamination successfully as well.